Hello, friends. Hello. Welcome to Craft Your Joy Live. I'm Lisa Hetrick. It is a cold one here in Maryland. I was watching everybody in the chat popping in from all over, and it's cold everywhere, except for maybe parts of Florida, right? Maybe parts of it. Anywho, friends, I'm so excited to be here with you today. It's February. We made it through the longest month of the year, January. And we're here now. And as you can see, things are still very light bright here in the studio space. And I even closed the door today to try to minimize some of the reflection coming off the snow. Here in Maryland, we still have snow on the ground and a lot of ice because the temperatures have not been very warm. They're very cold. So I see everybody popping in. All right, friends, it's February. And as promised, we are going to explore liquid watercolors this month in every tutorial that I share, between the watercolor tutorials and the paper crafting tutorials. We're going to explore liquid watercolors and also using your reinkers, which are liquid, as a watercolor medium for the paper crafting tutorials. But today, I'm dressed in pretty pansy-like colors, except for the scarf because it's cold. We're going to explore Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydrus watercolors today. Now, it isn't the only brand of liquid watercolors that are on the market, but it's the brand that I have, and it's the one that I like. So we're going to paint with them today. Now, if you are on my email list, it went out yesterday, and the Pansy outline for painting today, if you want to paint along, was in that email. It's also listed down below in the description of this video if you want to grab that and paint along. And if you don't have liquid watercolors, that's okay. You can paint along with whatever watercolor you have. I see everybody popping in, and it's super excited to see everybody here. Yay! Everybody's talking about the cold. I've got my comments up here this time, so I'm not like turning here. So let's just dive in and get going and talk about what we're going to paint today. And we're going to try to get this done within the hour. We'll try. Okay. All right, friends. Yeet! All right. So if you may have painted this pansy with me in the past, I did this as a private lesson in my Craft Your Joy community, and we painted this pansy, same kind of pansy, but we did it in markers and watercolor markers, which watercolor markers are going to be next month. This month we're going to explore liquid watercolors. But it was inspired from this painting right here. And I like to do this pansy in a bunch of different mediums. And because it seems like I'm stuck on pansies, because we did the pansy tutorial last week, we're going to do a paper crafting tutorial with the Basket of All Seasons pansies. We're just going to keep going with the pansies. So, yay, Jill. Jill shared that she's excited for this. Just bought a new set of brushes for watercoloring. Oh, cheap brushes. That could be part of the issue too. Yes, having cheap brushes. But let's dive in and let's just get going because I've got a lot to share today. Now, let me move a few things out. I also have a monitor in front of me so I can make sure I'm not missing anything with questions and things like that. So I'm excited. Okay, so here are the two Dr. P.H. Martin's sets that I have. Now, I really, these come in bigger bottles. Now, Dr. P.H. Martin's, these are the Hydrus watercolors. They also sell the Radiant watercolors. The Radiant watercolors are a dye-based watercolor medium. The Hydrus watercolors are more of a pigment-based watercolor medium. So very similar to the kinds of watercolors that you would find in a tube or a pan, but this is in more of a liquid form. So These are just, let's just go ahead and move these to the side. What I really love about these is they're portable, right? So they're kind of fun. This is a really small bottle. You really don't need the big honking bottles unless you do like a lot of calligraphy art. These are fantastic for like calligraphy or ink pens that, not ink pen, yeah, like pens where you're putting inks in. I know people use India inks and things like that for it, but you could use it for that. Airbrushes, like airbrush pens, all those different kinds of things. But what's really, really beautiful about these watercolors is they're liquid and they're fun to work with. They're really, really vibrant. And these, the Hydrus, are archival. So they are very, very similar to a really high quality watercolor paint in a tube or a pan that isn't going to fade over time. I've been using these for years off and on, and the reason why I like using them is because they're very, very vibrant. I'm going to pull a few colors today that we're going to work with. I've got a phthalo blue, I've got a cobalt violet. We're going to swatch them out too. I'm going to pull this white because we're going to use that, I think. We're going to pull a yellow, but I think I'm going to pull the yellow from this set. Now, do you need if you have a watercolor set at home, do you need to buy, I know someone's going to ask me, do you need the liquid watercolors? No, you don't, because you have a watercolor set. But if you're interested in exploring them, you can also just get them in a very small set of 4, or just get a couple colors and try them. I'm going to pull that yellow. I'm going to pull this ultramarine red violet. Then we're going to come back and pull some greens. We'll pull some greens for our leafery. What green do I want? That's a blue aqua green. I think this is a phthalo green. I think I'm going to pull phthalo green. So I pulled phthalo green and phthalo blue, and I've talked about them in the past. They're really, really great colors for mixing. So I think that'll be good for the greenery. We'll see. We'll play around. So I'm going to move these to the side and kind of put these in front and bring this in. So, and remember, friends, if you have questions along the way, just pop question in the chat and I'll answer them. I've got my printout of my Pansy, and I have my colors here. I'm going to have to move all of our comments a little bit to another location. Hold on. I'm moving our comments over underneath my face so that I can see them over there. Okay. So I've got this little plate, this porcelain plate, this palette, because liquid watercolors, they're really, really great. They're very, very vibrant. However, so I'm going to open up the screen. I'm just going to drop a few drops in there. They are liquid. So we're going to be able to dilute them down, add a lot of water, and I can mix them up too. So here's the phthalo blue. So that was phthalo green and phthalo blue. I'm just going to, ooh, that was a lot. You really don't need that much. A couple drops. And I just spread a bunch. I'm going to put my violets. This is cobalt violet. We're just going to paint today and talk along the way. Now, I did mix them up really good, but because they are pigment, that over time, if they sit and you don't mix them up, some of the pigment will go down to the bottom, and it'll just kind of hover there. Let's add a little bit of this yellow right here. I'm putting a lot more out than you really need. You really only need a couple drops. So that was my cobalt violet. And then I'm going to put this ultramarine red violet down. And we'll swatch out these colors too. Hopefully, did I bring? I did not. Let's see. Let's find another piece of watercolor paper. Let's grab a piece so that we can watercolor. Okay. All right. I did not grab a piece of watercolor. So that's what I'm doing right now. Let's grab an extra piece of watercolor. Oops. all these pieces. Here we go. Here we go. I cut all these pieces before we went live, and I left them sitting over there. So I printed out my Pansy on a piece of watercolor paper. This is a piece of Hydrus paper, but you can absolutely use whatever watercolor paper you want. Now, the Dr. Martin, the liquid watercolors work very, very well on papers like the Canson papers or the wood pulp papers that are not 100% cotton, but they're absolutely, because they're liquid and they move and they do all these wonderful things. They also, I prefer to use them on the 100% cotton paper. So this is Hydrus. It's got a little bit of texture to it. Now let's go ahead and swatch out some of these colors so we can take a peek at what we're working with and how we're going to play. Okay, I've got some water here. Let's take the Phthalo Blue, and I'm just coming to the edge a little bit and grabbing some because you can see immediately how intense that liquid watercolor is. And how you can just, it works just like a regular watercolor, because it is. You can really go from a really darker value of that color to a really lighter value just simply by adding the water. I can really get that down to a very, very pale blue. Super, super vibrant. Let's take a look at the phthalo green. Let's clean my brush in between. Now, why might you like liquid watercolors over pans or tubes? It's really a preference thing. It's really a preference thing. So here's this level of vibrancy. But you can get this level of vibrancy in a lot of watercolors, but look at it, it's just beautiful. That's phthalo blue. I mean phthalo green. I like them when I want to try something different. A lot of mixed media. Oh, here's that beautiful, beautiful violet. A lot of mixed media artists like them. They're great for sketchbooks. They're great. I'm going to add a little bit more right there. You can layer them. You can do all these wonderful things. A lot of paper crafting people like them. Also because it is kind of very efficient in the amount of color that you need. You don't need this much color. You need a couple drops and you can be on your way. Now, one of the things I want to share about them though is that if this will dry, and when you come back to it and try to reanimate it, like add water to it and use it, it works for some colors, but not all of the Hydrus colors. What'll happen when this dries is that the pigment starts to separate a little bit. So when you reanimate some of these colors with water, after they've dried, it'll get a little bit gritty. And that's only with some of the colors, not all of them. So I think what's just lovely about them is just they're another option for you. Look at that red violet. Oh my goodness. I think that for our Pansy today, we're going to use that red violet. Look at that color. Oh, I love it. Love it. And then look at the yellow. And what I really do like about them too is that they're mixable. They're mixable. We can mix these colors together. This, did I grab Hansa? Yeah, this is Hansa Yellow Medium. So this is a cool yellow, but not like a super lemony yellow. Love those colors. We're going to end up using this for our Pansy. We're going to end up mixing a little bit of blue with this color for our Pansy. And for that green, we're going to deepen that green a little bit and get it more greenery-ish. So we're going to mix. And what's fun about the liquid watercolors is they're fun to mix. They're fun to mix and fun to play with. So let's dive in. We're going to do a lot of wet into wet. Brush is going to be wet. Let me find my color here and kind of move it towards me. There we go. Brush is wet. Paper's going to be wet. I'm going to work one petal at a time. But Jeanette just said it's chilly in Florida. Oh boy. It's chilly everywhere. We're going to work one petal at a time. And right now I'm just adding some water to this petal. Then I'm going to take a little bit of this. You can see how I'm just grabbing just the very tiny bit of it and dropping it in and letting it do its thing. One of the things I like about the PH Martins is that they whooshes. Do you see the whoosh? So you can kind of just let it do its thing. And then I'm going to come in and tap, tap, tap. Just dance my brush around and encourage that color to move about the cabin here. Love this. Encourage it to move. And you need very, very little. So see how I'm working with what's here instead of dipping my brush back in and getting more. I will go in and get more, but you need very, very little to get started, getting that first layer in. And liquid watercolors work very much just like every other watercolor. You can layer and you can build up your colors. Tap, tap, tap. And we can let these dry. I'm going to grab a little bit more and just kind of drop some more color in the wet area where the two petals are meeting, because adding those darker values of that color is going to help give some differentiation between the petals when you can see which petals are coming forward and which petals are kind of going backward. And I'm going to let this be. Resisting the urge here. Not really, because I just put my brush in there, right? Resisting the urge to do a whole lot. Just let it kind of do its thing. Now I'm going to go across and work on the opposite petal. I'm going to turn, and we're just going to work our way around and chat. I just had a thought. While that's still a little bit wet right here, I'm going to take the tiniest bit of phthalo blue and kind of mix it in. So this is really cool. You got these liquid watercolors. We've got this wet into wet, and you can start dropping other colors in right on the paper and do your color mixing right on the paper. You can absolutely do that with other watercolors too. It's just kind of fun. So I'm going to take a little bit of that phthalo blue. Phthalo blue is a massively bright color that can be overpowering. And even that tiniest little dot that I put in, look what it did. It just took over. So kind of wanted to show you that because phthalo blue does that in everything. Every kind of watercolor you will use it. So I'm just going to kind of feather it out a little bit. And I can go over what I did, and I'm going to go back in and add the tiniest bit of purple back in here. But I love that phthalo blue and violet combination. When you look at pansies this spring, you'll see that. See how it's blending together and making another color? And you can see some of the granulation. Everybody sees some of those little pigments that you have happening here? It's absolutely gorgeous, granulation. But see how that tiniest little bit of phthalo blue just kind of really took over. So now I'm just dropping a few more drops, and I'm just dancing my brush around, letting it do its thing. Oh, that color, that's just so juicy. Love it. All right, let's keep going. We're going to do it around the others too. Now, if you didn't like that phthalo blue, or if you felt like that blue was just a little bit too vibrant, you could use an ultramarine blue. Tanya loves the granulation. I do too. Really. Okay, clean brush, as clean as you can get it. And then just follow out your next petal. Friends, we might get some snow overnight. It's supposed to just be like maybe an inch or flurry-ish. I guess we'll see. It's February. It's going to be cold. All right, I'm going to pick up some of this color, but you can see just, it's quite a bit. Now, I'm going to do the same thing and just drop some of this color in around that petal and let it do its thing. Look how intense it is, and it kind of spiders out. Love it. Drop in the chat if you have ever worked with liquid watercolors. Now, in our paper crafting world, many of our paper crafting brands have versions of liquid watercolors, like Hero Arts. I know that there are many that have released them over the years, liquid watercolors. And you may have those in your stash, or you may have experimented with them. Oh, I love this. Now, I'm going to take some of that phthalo blue, the tiniest little bit. You see me grabbing just kind of the tiniest little bit. And look, even that tiny little bit dropped in there just kind of says, hey, I'm joining the party. And it comes on in. Let's drop some more of that violet in there at the top. Judy says she's never used them. Well, it's good. It's good to know what options are out there if you ever get curious and want to explore. But again, I'm sharing them here because I enjoy them and I've been using them, and I just think they're delightful to work with and play with, and I really do enjoy them in general paintings like we're doing today. But I also think for our stamping and card making projects or our paper crafting projects, they're very, very useful. So the whole intention of me kind of sharing, like last month we did watercolor pencils. This month we're going to do some liquid watercolors and just talk about all the different things related to them over the month, is just to kind of share my experiences with you, and also, hopefully we learn something together. And along the way, we're definitely learning watercolor techniques together, and I'm really digging the way that looks. Now, just like with our regular watercolors that aren't liquid, our pans or our tubes, when these dry, they will fade back. However, we are working with them. They're a little bit more vibrant when they fade back. Like this is almost dry, and you can see that level of vibrancy is still pretty day glowish. So, Americana Star. I use distress inkers, yes, with penny black liquid watercolors, liquid colors. Oh boy, 12.5 inches of snow last week. The distress ring inkers are super fun to use. I have them. I love using them as a liquid watercolor. They're really, really fun to use. So any kind of ring inker that you have, you can use, and we'll use them. We'll use them on this Thursday's tutorial. Tanya said, I've used them for years, but I prefer a palette. It's interesting. I've used them for years as well. We're going to go into this petal up here and just get wet into wet. I've used them for years, but it's true. I gravitate towards a palette, towards pans or tubes first. So, this month getting them out, and it's also like encouraging me to experiment more with what's in my stash and make discoveries. So that's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. Oh, Tanya, you use the Gina K inks. Me too. We're going to use them on Thursday. I use them all the time. You all have seen me use them all the time. And they're fun to use. I'm going to drop my concentration of the color, as you can see, like towards the top here. Clean off my brush. Then I'm going to brush dance it down and around to my edges here. and bring it around. We're going to use the Gina K reinkers on Thursday for Thursday's tutorial. But I do like using them as a watercolor medium. And there's several colors in the stash that I absolutely love to use. And so I'm going right up to my edge here. This is dry. And one of the things I wanted to share about liquid watercolors is that you can, once it's dry, if I go back over it, see how I can try to pull some of it away or pull some of the color up. I can get some, but very, very little. So once some of these colors dry, they reanimate, but it's a little more challenging to get them to move. So going back in and scrubbing away some of this color that's here is not impossible, but it's a little more challenging to do because some of these darker colors stain. So other brands of watercolor in a palette or a tube you'd have a little bit more, like some brands you'd have a little bit more ability to scrub some of this away. So see how I'm scrubbing it away and I'm not really getting a lot? It's because these colors are really, really super vibrant. Super, super vibrant. Okay, love these. So also, I haven't listed these down below in the description, but I will afterwards if you're interested in them. But they're very, very common. I'm just going to drop in some of this blue. Been around for a long time. I'm going to have this colors that go between here and here be a little bit lighter. And I'm really just going to let this blue kind of do its thing into the purple and let it be. So I love this because there's a lot of experimenting going on and everything is wet and wet into wet. So the liquid watercolors are wet, my paper's wet, and I'm just kind of playing with everything. Okay, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to turn this around this way. Now my paper is a little bit, my water is a little bit tinged with the blue, so that's fine. I can kind of see how I'm applying water. Got a little bit of the illustration right here for the center of the pansy. So let's just go ahead and try to work around that. I'm going to drop in this color and just kind of let it do its thing. Do, do, do. And then we'll coax it out and about and around. I do have all of these watercolors in, like, if you wanted to take a peek at them, they're in my Amazon storefront. That link is down below in the description. But after the show today, I will go in and add them. I meant to add them before we went live to the description down below. But I kind of got busy with a couple things. Just dancing my brush around. And letting it do its thing here at the bottom. Really liking that. I feel like with liquid watercolors too, I enjoy them very much for doing flowers because I don't have to build up a lot of layers. So as you can see, I've built up like one layer here of color, like one pass at things, and it's really vibrant. So I don't have to spend a lot of time glazing and layering up colors. I'm just adding a little bit more of that violet into the wet into wet, and just dancing my brush around. Dab, 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 dancing it around, and just clean off my brush a little bit. And you can kind of feather these colors into each other. Just very, very gently. So I think like one of the other benefits of the liquid watercolors is that level of vibrancy that you get from them. And you don't have to spend so much time building up color because they are so incredibly transparent, just like a pan or a tube. But that vibrancy is like day glow. Like, look at it. It's very, very, very vibrant. So if we take a look at this same design with this one was done with watercolor markers, and it takes a lot more marker work to build up that color. And this is soft and absolutely beautiful. But you can see that we've not done much layering, not done hardly any layering. It's one pass of color, letting this color kind of do its thing. And we're probably only going to do one pass. So super, super beautiful. All right, I'm going to turn this way. The blend of the color is strictly just blending the phthalo blue and blending the violet, the red violet together. And I'm basically just letting it do its thing in the water. So again, this last petal here, we're going to do wet into wet. I'm going to flip this around, being the lefty. And it also dries very, very quickly in between. I'm using this Arches 100% cotton paper, and this paper loves water, loves this color. Oh, just so pretty, so pretty. Just kind of coax it down and around, tapping it around. I feel like using liquid watercolors also is just kind of delightful and fun. And especially for these wet into wet techniques. But you all know that I do not discriminate. I like all kinds of watercolor brands. And I just think that these are just delightful to work with. And a good choice if you want to try them out. This particular brand. Now just remember, if you're trying out a different liquid watercolor brand, it might not be pigment based. These are pigment based. So they are, and you can see it made from the finest artist pigments, which have been chosen for their extreme light fastness. So other liquid watercolors might be more dye based, which if to kind of equate that and give you some more knowledge about that, it would be more like our water-based inks for our paper crafting projects. They're all mostly dye-based. So yes, they're super, super vibrant, but they will fade in the light. Our card projects would eventually fade if they were exposed to like intense light. Oh, I forgot to bring, I don't know why it stopped there. So see how I'm gonna, I need to bring that down into this little crevice. So I'm gonna try to coax some of that color down. I'll put a little bit more up here so that I can get some on the brush. And then I can coax just a little bit of it down here into this crevice right here. I don't want there to be a lot in there because I do want there to be some definition between these petals. But I need to get a little bit more color down in there. Now I'm going to take a little bit more and just kind of toss it up here, dropping it in. I'm letting it do its thing. This is going to be such a pretty pansy. I love the purple pansies. The purple and blue pansies with the yellow, just so delightful. The liquid watercolors also work well with other mediums. So if you want to use, they're just like every other watercolor. If you want to use your color pencils or your watercolor pencils with them, you can absolutely do that. Just kind of taking a little wet brush right there. Got a little bit of water. Now, this is just stunning. Stunningly bright. Loving the way this looks. feel like we might not be adding any more color to it. We're going to let it dry. We're going to move on to the petals right here because I want to talk about mixing some greens. They're a little bit challenging to see. So let's talk about getting a green. Now, in some of the Dr. P.H. Martin's, there will be some convenience colors. You'll be able to find some greens in these two sets. These are what I would call like mixing colors. So they're all great, pure, one single pigment where you can mix them with other colors and kind of create other things. So, a lefty. We got another friend. It's a lefty. I'm going to take some of that phthalo green. I'm going to pop a little bit of it in right here. And we're going to play around with that green to get it a little bit deeper and get more of a leafery kind of green. If I were to add, this is the fun part, and I want to know in the chat. Last week we talked about some ideas of adding stitching to some future tutorials. I have talked about color mixing, adding that idea to tutorials, but I think with these liquid watercolors, one of the tutorials this month is just going to be like all about mixing some of these colors together and creating new colors. Now we're going to do that along the way, but I think if we just take some time and have a concentrated lesson on it, it would be a ton of fun. Now, if I take a little bit of the phthalo blue and pop it into the green, you can see that phthalo blue overpowers the green. And I get more of like a turquoise color. So phthalo blue can easily overpower the green. If I add more green back in, I can start to bring it back. But so that's a really beautiful combination of colors, but it's not going to really work for the leafery that I want. So we're going to play a little bit. I'm just going to take a little bit of this red violet and pop it in and see what I get. So I'm starting to turn it again more turquoise. I might have to bring in a little bit of a brown. If I added a little bit more violet, what do I get? So see how I'm bringing it more into the blue values, which is not what I really wanted to do. But look at those colors, how beautiful they are. I do want there to be a little bit of blue in the leafery, but I really want to skew it a little bit more towards green. Now, if I take a little bit of yellow and I pop this in here, I'm going to start to be able to bring it back to a green. So we're working from that phthalo green, added a little bit of phthalo blue and played around and got variations of turquoise. Now, if I take a little bit more and I add it to it, it's going to start to skew it over towards like a lemony color. And I don't really want that. So I'm just going to go back and forth and play a little bit. Add a little bit more of that purple and see if I can tone that down a little bit. I'm running out of space. Let's go over here. Yes. Okay, I'm getting closer to that sap green, but I need to make some more of it, right? Because I got quite a bit going here. So I'm going to take a little bit of my phthalo green, pop that back in, get a good amount of that going. Clean off my brush a little bit. I wasn't really cleaning off my brush. I'm going to take the tiniest bit of that phthalo green, phthalo blue, the tiniest bit of our violet, clean off, mix this together. It's giving me that turquoise color. Again, it's giving me that turquoisey light color. This is the fun part of watercolor, where you just keep experimenting. Take a little bit of that yellow, pop it in, and I'm starting to get it back. Starting to get it back. I really want it. I want that green to be just the tiniest bit more dirty, right? To have a little bit more leafery going for it. So what I'm going to go for, let's see if I have it in here. Normally I would grab myself a dark orange. This is Venetian brown, or a burnt sienna. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the tiniest bit of this raw sienna. And I may regret this, but I'm going to take the tiniest bit of this raw sienna color. I'm just going to put a little droplet right there. And I'm going to grab a tiny bit of it and pop it in here. Yes! And that gets it to the green that I want it to be. See that green that's a little deeper? It's got a little bit of a yellow undertone to it. Let's go for it. Okay, I'm going to got quite a bit of stuff going here. So we're just going to take these two pieces of leafery and just paint in some water. And you can see that the water is tinged blue. That's okay. That's okay. Really digging this one. Let's take some of our green and then just start dropping it in. Just like we did with the pansies. Drop, drop, drop. Dropping it in. David said, yikes, if you mix all those colors and then run out before you're done, I can't imagine being able. Well, okay, that's a good point. So if you know that you're going to be keep playing and mixing up all those colors, and you want to keep like whipping up a big batch, I would have done more. I would have used a lot more of the color and whipped up a big batch, so to speak, at the start. But also, if you run out, that's the fun thing about the experimentation of it. So really, really like that leafery piece. While that piece is going, while there's a little bit of water there, I'm going to drop the tiniest bit of that raw sienna color. See how I'm just tapping it in? Just right where the petals and the leafery meet. Just to kind of create a little bit of an extra value of color there. Love that. Love it. Now, I did that pretty light, so I'm going to go back in and add another layer over that leafery, but we'll see. We'll see. Hello, Stampin' Lynn, another lefty. A lot of us are lefties. I'm going to go in and just kind of paint this, follow the lines. You can see that my water is tinged blue. I don't mind. Kind of helps me see where I'm painting. I think that's useful. We might need to mix up some more color. Let's see. Let's drop some in. Yeah, we're going to have to mix up some more color. Let me take some of this phthalo green that I had, put that there. Clean off my brush, drop in the tiniest bit of blue. Drop in the tiniest bit of yellow. Drop in, and let's mix that up. And then add a little bit of that raw sienna. Normally I would pick burnt sienna because I like that vibrancy of it. Get some of that green back. There we go. Love that. Oh, late as always. No worries, Della. Always have the replay. All right, dropping this color in, and it's definitely not the same as what's going on over here. So I need to mix up some more. Let's get some of this phthalo over here. Might need some more phthalo green. And all I'm trying to do is get that leafery light green. So a common green for your florals projects that you might have on your stash is sap green. You know, y'all know I love Cascade Green from Daniel Smith. That's more of a bluey green. Undersea Green is another one from Daniel Smith. I'm just looking for those deeper greens, but because I don't have that in this brand, I'm just mixing it up, kind of creating it. This is a little bit more of a bluey green, so let's take a look at that swatch, see how bluey it is. So let's go ahead and clean off my brush and add a little bit of that raw sienna back in. I think I need a little bit more because that green looks greeny. So let's add some in. There we go. There we go. I'm getting that green that I want. My paper's still a little bit wet. Let's drop this in. Yeah, I'm digging it. We'll see. It's a little bit more vibrant than I'd like it to be, but that's okay. I'm going to add a little bit of that straight up raw sienna in there. Just this technique right here is just direct to paper color mixing. So see how I had the green and I have a little bit of that raw sienna. And I'm just going to dance them together. Brush dance them together and physically mix them, color mix them right on the paper. Love that. I'm loving the way that looks. And we'll let that dry. I feel like I'm going to have to come back here and add some because we have so much white here in the middle of the petal, but that's okay. Just kind of dancing my brush around, adding another layer. If I wanted a little bit more white right here, now is the opportunity to kind of go in with my brush and lift some up, off, and away. And see how the color still is there. It's not completely, we weren't able to completely get back to the white of the paper, but I was able to pull some of that up and out and away to create a little bit of light. Dropping a little bit of that raw sienna in over here. Let's turn this way. Brush is a little bit wet. There we go. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. There we go. Just kind of feathering that out. I'm really digging that. Okay, now I'm going to move to a smaller brush. How are we doing on time? Doing good. I'm actually going to make it in an hour this week. So let's pause for a minute. You can see how super vibrant everything is. Look how vibrant the petals are. I don't really need to go in and add another layer. I might go in and add a little bit of a finishing touch around the petals, but I think I might not even do that. You could go in with watercolor pencils or with colored pencils if you really wanted a little bit more of a crisper edge, but I think I'm going to leave it a little bit raw. Kind of like that. Now I'm going to come in with the same green that we made and just kind of follow my line work here for the leafery pieces. And just kind of, now this green it's a little bit bright, so I'm adding some more of that sienna into it to kind of get that color to be a little bit more on the leafery side. And then we'll go ahead in here and just kind of follow those lines and create those petals. So see how that is a little more leafery like, and this one right here is a little more day glowy green. Let's just go ahead and add a little bit more of that color over top of it. Woo! Kind of digging that. This, I just had a thought. Just had a watercolor intrusive thought. Many of you who've been with me before have heard me say that. So when I've painted this before, I felt like a couple times I painted, I think it was when I painted this one, I felt like that looks like a crab. Like it looks like a crab. And as I was starting to do this one, I was like, oh, Lisa, let's try not to make this look like a crab. Anybody else ever had a watercolor intrusive thought? where you're like, what were you thinking? That looks like a crab. All right, let's go in and we'll clean off my brush a little bit, grab a little bit more of this. Watercolor Intrusive Thoughts. Just kind of creating these little leafery petals. Love that. Following my little line, I think I want to add one right here. I'm going rogue. I'm just going to add that right there, just to kind of fill that out a little bit. Love that. All right, now everything is dry. I don't need to go back in and dry anything out. And you can see, whoosh, it is super, super, super vibrant. And I don't feel like we need to go in and add another layer of color. Now, I could easily go in and add some more layers and build it up, but keep this in mind. Normally with a watercolor pen or another watercolor set that I have shared on this channel before, I would maybe 3 is like my max of layers, like adding that first light layer, then adding another layer. We kind of went in, because these are super, super vibrant, went in hot and heavy in the beginning, and you got a lot of pigment like right away. So it's almost like adding 2 layers in one right away. If I kept going and did like 3 layers, I'm going to get something a little more like this, where the transparency is kind of gone, because I'm adding layer on top of layer, and it's super, super vibrant, but it's also like really dense in color, and there's not a lot of transparency happening right in here. It's beautiful though. Do love it. Do love it. But then watercolor markers, super, super light. I could go back in over these watercolor markers and add a little bit of this to kind of pop that color a little bit. So that's kind of fun how you can use some different mediums to do different things. All right, I'm going to clean off my brush. Oy, I should have brought in another thing of water to keep this a little cleaner. So I'm going to open up my water bottle and try to, I'll just dip my brush in it, and then I'll clean it. I'll get some fresh water. Because that water is tinged blue, I didn't want to dip it into my yellow, as it would turn it green. All right, I'm just going to go in hot and heavy here with this yellow color. And just add some of that yellow right in here in this middle and go for it. And kind of let it be and let it do its thing. Love that. You can also add, like, if it's a little bit wet, you could go in, add a little tiny bit of yellow over top of that. Like, that would be one thing I'd recommend. I always talk about how you can add yellow at the end as a little bit of a finisher over leaves, and you kind of jack up that luminosity a little bit. So my brush is kind of wet but kind of dry, and see how we added that little bit of yellow and it kind of made it glow a little bit more. Love that. Now I am going to dry this real quick, because I'm going to go over that very, very center with the darkest violet that I have. Let's dry. See how we're doing on time? We're doing great. Janet just shared she loves the pansy face. I do too. It's the happiest face. And I love them because pansies and violas, they come out first, sort of like right after the crocuses and like some of the snowdrops. And so they're kind of some of our first blooms of spring, and they're just delightful. I'm going to take a little bit of that violet and put it right here on this palette. And then I'm going to take a little bit of that raw sienna and mix it into the violet, just to get a little bit of a darker violet that will kind of look like it's black. So kind of mixed up a little bit of a dark violet blackish color for that center. Dig in this. Let me just show you what that looks like on the swatch, that mix. So see how it's a dark, like dark grayish blackish. I mixed violet with a little bit of raw sienna to get that color. But he's sharing, it's so beautiful. Pansies are my favorite. My too, Susan. All right, loving this. Loving the way this looks. Feeling, so a couple things that you could do. I'm actually gonna, I may regret this. I'm gonna take a little bit of this and just kind of add a little, just following my line work here. I'm adding a little bit of that color over top to the inside of the flower, you know, the inside of a pansy or the inside of a violet or an orchid kind of has that line work right that goes up to the stamen. I just kind of whipped that in, did that. All right, I'm digging this. We may call it done. We may call it done. As I just touch it up a little bit. So I am going to call it done. I think it looks really, really good for what we were playing around with our first experiment with liquid watercolors. I hope you guys enjoyed this and you could see like how fun liquid watercolors could be. We just kind of touched on the basics of liquid watercolors today. As we move through the month with them, I'm going to share some other techniques with them, like texture-based techniques, some of the other kind of techniques that we do with regular watercolors, how you can adapt that and do it with liquid watercolors. I just really enjoyed this painting today. Super quick, painting over lunch, finished in an hour. Love it. Love it. And I don't think I'm going to go back and tweak it at all. I don't think I am. I might. But I always say I'm going to, and I never really do. But, okay, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you got a lot out of today's pause and paint that we did together. I'm in the mood to paint the flowers, even though there's snow on the ground. Spring will eventually arrive. It will eventually arrive. I hope you really, really enjoyed today's tutorial. Thanks so much for joining me. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Pop them in the chat. I will go back in and add the supplies that I used. I will add them in the description after the live today. And I will see you back on Thursday. Yeah, I will see you back on Thursday at 11:30. I'm going to have a new paper crafting tutorial. We're going to use liquid watercolors. We're going to work, I got a mashup idea. We're going to work with the Pansy set from the Basket of All Seasons, my new die set, and we're going to mash it up with Simplicity and Joy that just came out, the tea set, the tea stamping set. So thank you, everyone. Everyone's saying so many wonderful things in the chat. You're all so sweet. Okay, we're going to head on out. I made it in an hour. 1 hour. Holy moly. We did a watercolor in an hour together. So fun. All right, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. I will see you on Thursday. Bye now.